A year ago, I began filming my new movie, Am I Racist? The goal of the movie was to go deep undercover into the world of DEI and show how bad the problem really is. There'll be some moments in the movie that just seem too crazy to be real, but I assure you it's real, and it's been a real problem for quite a while, in fact. To prove to you how big of an issue DEI is, I wanted to take you on a trip down memory lane of some recent real-world examples of anti-white racism. But before we do that, check out the trailer for Am I Racist? Tickets will go on sale August 15th. Visit amiracist.com for more details on that. Now enjoy the trailer.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification.
And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you and less for you. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah.
This country is a piece of shit.
White.
Folks,
White.
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around?
What's a black person right here? Does he not
They gon'
exist?
say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi.
What's your name?
I'm Matt.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist.
In theaters September 13th, rated PG-13.
If you open any history textbook in this country, you'll learn that the crowning achievement of the civil rights movement was supposedly the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And for the first time in American history, the law banned discrimination based on race, particularly in the context of employment. And from that point forward, we were told businesses would not be allowed to hire or fire people because they were black or white or Asian or whatever. It was supposedly the dawn of a new era. Lyndon Johnson might have escalated our role in Vietnam, but at least he finished what JFK started and signed the Civil Rights Act, and we should all be thankful for that. That is the comic book version of civil rights law anyway, which also happens to be what pretty much everybody believes to this day. The truth is different, though. The truth is that in 2023, the Civil Rights Act is not simply a dead letter. It is a document so defunct, so pointless, so irrelevant, that it stopped prohibiting racist employment discrimination several years ago, and no one even noticed when it happened. At least since 2020, and probably much earlier, the largest corporations in this country have openly discriminated against white people solely on the basis of skin color. And to be clear, we're not talking about quote-unquote holistic discrimination or discrimination at the margins here. We're talking about a de facto, near total ban on hiring white people. So here are the numbers. And there's no need to, hype this up or use hyperbole because the numbers by themselves are shocking, like hard to believe. In 2021, the largest public companies in the United States, meaning the companies in the S&P 100, they hired collectively 300,000 people in that year. Now, of those 300,000 people, only 6% of them were white. So a total of 94% of them were so-called people of color, meaning blacks, Hispanics, and so on. Now, this is data so extreme that it doesn't even seem to be real, even if you know that anti-white discrimination is a real problem and it's happening in this country and it's mainstream. Even if you knew that, when you hear these numbers, it's, again, hard to believe. These are the kinds of numbers that appear at first glance to be impossible. But they're not impossible. The biggest corporations in the United States with the best funded legal departments in the entire world implemented this virtually absolute ban on hiring whites without any regard to the hallowed Civil Rights Act. There was not a single member of Congress of either party who paid any attention to the fact that 94% of new hires among the biggest corporations in the United States were non-white. Now, to be fair, as this was happening, companies in the S&P 100 insisted that they weren't targeting whites in particular. For example, here's one Apple executive telling the Washington Post that their main goal in the era of George Floyd is not to punish anyone. Instead, Apple said they just want to honor the victims of supposed racial injustice and create a more equitable playing field. Watch.
So Apple's taken an holistic approach, a sort of approach to criminal justice, education, small business, or economic empowerment. Why this approach as opposed to, say, a more concentrated approach that focuses on one of those issues?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we wanted to try to touch the places where we thought we could have impact. And in honor of how this all got started, our Racial Equity and Justice Initiative is 3 years old. It started in the wake of the George Floyd, the Breonna Taylor deaths, and we wanted to honor their encounters with the criminal justice system, which were so deeply unfair, to say that those murders, as they happen, there should be work done in that area as well.
Yes, we have to honor them. We have to honor these scumbags. We have to honor these criminals, drug addicts, and drug dealers. We have to honor them. We have to honor them by making sure that only 6% of our jobs go to white people. By the way, white people still account for, I think, like 70% of the U.S. population in total. So that's 6% of the jobs going to 70% of the population. Now, on the other end, Black Americans account for about 13% of the population. And if you see a disparity where only 6% of a certain kind of job are going to 13% of the population, we're told that this is a massive, massive problem. And this is systemic racism. So 6% to 13% would be systemic racism, terrible, awful, it's slavery, it's Jim Crow. But 6% of jobs going to 70%, now, that's there's nothing to see here. The executive at Apple goes on and on with a bunch of platitudes, and she never mentions that the S&P 100 is going to unperson hundreds of millions of white people effectively. She never says that Apple is going to start running ads with a diverse array of overweight, multicultural actors having a little sit-down with an obese rendition of Mother Earth. Apple, like so many other companies in the S&P 100, tried to keep its hatred of white people under wraps, and for the most part, they succeeded. We only know about what's happened here because of an article in the left-wing Bloomberg News, of all places. And incredibly enough, this was not an article condemning the overt racist discrimination of the S&P 100. Not at all. This was not a breathtaking piece of investigative journalism that demanded answers as to why the most powerful corporations were not hiring whites because they're whites. Instead, the article from Bloomberg made this racial discrimination sound like a great thing. Here's the headline from Bloomberg News. And again, this is the only reason we even know about this. The only outlet reporting on the fact that only 6% of the jobs went to white people is Bloomberg. But here's how they framed it. Corporate America promised to hire a lot more people of color. It actually did. The relief from Bloomberg was palpable. Thank God that thousands of white people didn't get hired in 2021, Bloomberg was saying. In fact, Bloomberg went a step further than that. Bloomberg also published the story under a banner reading equality. So they acted like it's a win for equality to reject the vast majority of white applicants. That's equality. Because nothing screams equality like preventing white people from getting jobs. That's equality. What Bloomberg did is collect data from the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which by law requires that large companies report their demographics to the government. And in the interest of full disclosure, we have to note that we haven't seen all this data because Bloomberg hasn't published all of it. And a lot of this is not posted by the government online either. But from what Bloomberg has disclosed and from publicly available records, we can make a few determinations. And for one thing, and this is a minor point, but it's important to make it anyway, from what we can tell, the data appears to be counting Hispanics as people of color. So you'll notice that when Hispanics commit violent crimes, like running over retired ex-police chiefs with stolen cars, for example, they're listed as white on official records. But in this case, they're considered people of color. Make of that what you will. So if they get a job, they're a person of color. If they commit a crime, they're white. Getting into credit card debt is so easy. Getting out, well, the system is set up so you can't. If you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills, you need to check out PDS Debt. PDS provides a service to match you with debt solutions tailored to your financial situation. If you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, PDS has solutions for you. Everyone with $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies, and there is no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit accepted. I know how much debt can weigh on your shoulders, so don't wait any longer and get in contact with PDS Debt now so you can finally have some peace of mind. PDS Debt has customized options for anyone struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, or medical bills. They strive to understand your specific scenario and can help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. Save more while paying off your debt in a fraction of the time. Stop waiting, start saving, get a free debt analysis right now at pdsdebt.com/Walsh. It only takes 30 seconds. That's pdsdebt.com/Walsh today, pdsdebt.com/Walsh. This is from Newsweek. Coca-Cola, facing mounting backlash from conservatives online, has responded to allegations of anti-white rhetoric after an internal whistleblower leaked screenshots of diversity training materials that encourages staff to try to be less white. By the way, starting here in the very first sentence, you notice how Newsweek says that it's conservatives who are the ones who are causing this backlash over the anti-white racism from Coca-Cola. Now, that's correct. It is mostly conservatives. But you see how readily the media admits that conservatives are the only ones who care about racism against white people. The media will readily accept, in fact, is happy to give that issue to conservatives. Back to the articles. It says, on Friday, Carolyn Baransenko, an activist who supports banning critical race theory, shared images from an internal whistleblower of the company's online racism training. The slides included tips to learners on how to be less white, less arrogant, less certain, less defensive, less ignorant, and more humble. Because, of course, we know that, that's synonymous with white, is being arrogant and all those other things. Now, so this is the part you probably heard about all this. A Coca-Cola spokesperson confirmed that the course is part of a learning plan to help build an inclusive workforce, but also noted that, quote, the video circulating on social media is from a publicly available LinkedIn learning series and is not a focus of our company's curriculum. They said our Better Together global learning curriculum is part of a learning plan to help build an inclusive workforce. It is comprised of a number of short vignettes, each a few minutes long. The training includes access to LinkedIn learning on a variety of topics, including on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay. So that's your classic non-denial denial, because they're saying, they're not coming out and saying this is totally made up and photoshopped, it's not real. They're saying, yeah, this is part of the curriculum, it's just, that's not our focus. We're not focused on that part of it. Well, if we want to know whether that excuse should wash, then all we have to do is, like I always say with something like this, if you want to know whether it's racist, and if it's not immediately clear to you, like something like this should be, all you have to do is take white out and put another race in. So if Coca-Cola was putting their employees through a training course that at any point included the instruction to be less black, there would be no controversy at all. We wouldn't be calling this a controversy. There'd be nothing like that. Around, just everybody would agree, across all aisles would agree that it's inexcusable racism. And it's racism, by the way. Just straightforward racism. Because the other thing that I've seen in response to this Coca-Cola story is the claim that this is reverse racism. In fact, there are still some, I think most conservatives have wised up on this issue, but there are still some conservatives that I've seen saying, this is reverse racism. Coca-Cola is committing reverse racism. No, this is not reverse racism. Let's be clear about that. Coca-Cola is not guilty of reverse racism. They are guilty of racism. Straightforward, regular old racism. There's no such thing as reverse racism. There's just racism. That's it. Reverse racism implies, when you say reverse racism, you're surrendering the point. You're ceding ground. You're agreeing with the left's premise that racism itself is a white thing, and that white people own racism. And so if a black person or if a non-white person is racist, all they're doing is reversing the racism. Which has a hint, the phrase itself has a hint of kind of giving them a taste of their own medicine. Right? Well, we're reversing the racism back on you. There's no race that owns racism. Racism is racism. Reverse racism is not a thing. This is simply racism. The Washington Post reports that China is currently in the process of modernizing and diversifying its fleet of nuclear warheads. The Defense Department now expects that China's arsenal will have quadrupled within the next decade. By 2030, the communist nation should have more than 1,000 nuclear warheads. Among them will be a certain number of hypersonic orbital missiles, which can circle the globe without being detected. And of course, that's not new technology, and China still will have fewer nuclear weapons than we do. I mean, enough to destroy the entire planet, so probably that's sufficient. But we'll still have more. But the point, though, is that they seem focused on strengthening their position and becoming a more formidable global force, while we have well, other priorities. In an interview with NPR, General David Berger announced that the Marine Corps will be overhauling and reinventing itself in order to institute more diversity. Not nuclear diversity, but the type of diversity that politically correct HR representatives are worried about. Reading from Yahoo News, it says, according to Berger, Marines will work to, quote, reflect America, to reflect the society we come from, adding that the decision is not one related to being woke or politically correct. Sure, whatever you say. Quote, our advantage militarily is on top of our shoulders, Berger said. It's not actually our equipment. We are better than anybody else, primarily because we don't all think exactly alike. We didn't come from the same backgrounds. Now, far be it for me to question the esteemed general. I didn't serve in the military. I never fought in any war. I admit that. Even so, I'm skeptical that any military engagement has ever been won due to diversity of ethnic backgrounds among the victors. Can anybody point me to an example from military history of a battle that was won because of diversity? I'm trying to imagine back, say, during the Normandy invasion, a group of soldiers pinned down, taking heavy enemy fire. One of them shouts, "We need someone with a diverse ethnic background over here, stat!" It's hard for me to picture that. I can't see why that would have specifically helped. But the Marines are all in on their diversity plan anyway. In fact, as Fox News reports, they're paying big bucks to make this happen. Quote from the report, a job listing with the U.S. Marine Corps seeking a diversity, equity, and inclusion advisor with a starting salary of $144,000 is gaining attention on social media. The USMC is hiring the advisor to ensure that, quote, all internal and external communications reflect diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, and to develop tools that enable shifting the USMC cultural paradigm for diversity, equity, and inclusion. The DEI advisor will work in collaboration with the Chief Diversity Officer and the Diversity Review Board, the listing states. Duties include the assessment of diversity and inclusion program effectiveness, design and lead implementation of process improvement initiatives, and provide executive level consultation. I don't know what any of that means. As well as the development and administering of training and education guidance to the CDO. It says, quote, you will drive strategic management concepts and principles, including assisting with the development of Marine Corps policy, supporting the USMC's mission, vision, values, strategic goals, and objectives, according to the listing. Now, needless to say, $144,000 a year is significantly more than any of the men out actually doing the fighting are getting paid. So risk your life for your country and get paid about the same as, Papa John's shift supervisor or less, but sit behind a desk developing equity and inclusion strategies, and, that's where the big bucks are made. At any rate, if you want more information on our military's diversity plans, you'll be happy to know that you can go to the Marine Corps Association website and download their full Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan, as written by Lieutenant General David Adignan and Brigadier General Jason Woodworth. Here you'll find details about what this Chief Diversity Officer will do, and you can learn about the formation of the aforementioned Diversity Review Board, which the Marines will be using as they strive to achieve their diversity goals. And this is not just about racial diversity, of course. As they explain, quote, today's Marine Corps is 58% white and 42% minority. From 2010 to 2020, enlisted diversity grew from 33% to over 45%, and our officer diversity grew from 16% to 34%. Female diversity continues to climb each year and is currently over 9%. These are signs that we are making positive progress, but much work remains to be done to retain and promote a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive force across all ranks. Now, again, we must ask the question from before. In the whole history of military conflict across the entire globe, has there ever been a battle won because one side was more inclusive and equitable than the other? I don't think so. In fact, battles have been won with the exact opposite approach. Rather than diversity, militaries have always valued cohesiveness, uniformity. That's why units march in formation. That's why we call them units. It's why they literally wear things called uniforms. Individuality has never been emphasized. Instead, it's been subordinated, ruthlessly sometimes, to the needs of the unit, the group, the whole. As for inclusiveness and equity, our military was a formidable fighting force a two-time world champion because it set standards for itself that excluded those who were unfit, those who couldn't hack it. The military has never been a democracy. It's never been a place for individual expression. It has never been a beacon of tolerance or equality. The military is a hierarchy. All militaries are hierarchies. There is no equality or equity in a hierarchy. There can't be. There's never been a democratic military. There's never been a tolerant military. There's never been anything like what they are currently turning it into right now. So once again, we see that the left's project is to demolish, deconstruct, and fundamentally rebuild and redefine everything, every American institution, every organization, every tradition, every word, every idea. Terms like politically correct and woke don't really even begin to capture what's actually happening in our country and what these people intend to do to it. Daily Wire Plus members have unlimited on-demand access to our uncensored, ad-free daily shows, real-time breaking news, and investigative journalism. Don't be left in the dark. Join us and the fight right now. dailywire.com/subscribe.